Hello, welcome to Unlocking Buddhism. Have you ever felt fear not as a sharp scream but as a quiet hum beneath everything? Like a presence that walks with you just behind your thoughts, shaping what you avoid, how you speak, even the dreams you dare to have. Fear is strange like that. It doesn't always shout. Often, it whispers. Most of us don't even notice how often we're negotiating with it. The job we stay in because of security, the words we hold back to avoid disapproval, the risks we don't take. We call it being careful or realistic, but sometimes it's just fear, dressed in adult clothes. In Buddhist teachings, fear isn't an enemy, it's a messenger, one that points toward our attachments, our uncertainties, and our longing for control. Thich Nhat Hanh taught that the way to transform fear isn't to fight it, but to sit beside it, to breathe with it, to invite it to tea. That might sound poetic, but it's also deeply practical. Because fear, like all emotions, loses its grip when it is seen clearly and held gently. Imagine this: you are walking through a dark forest. You hear something behind you, branches snapping, shadows moving. You panic, but when you turn around with a lantern, you find only a small bird or the wind playing with leaves. That's what mindfulness does. It brings light. And with light, the monster often turns out to be nothing more than mind. Not by eliminating fear, that's not the goal, but by learning how to hold it with clarity and compassion, so it doesn't hold us. Now gently ask yourself, what would I do if fear wasn't making my decisions for me? Let's walk together into the forest, not to escape the fear, but to see it for what it truly is. In a remote valley surrounded by thick woods and restless winds, there was a village shaped as much by its fears as by its traditions. Generations of families had passed down a single story, the story of the cave in the forest. They called it the hollow place, a space where the unknown waited, where brave ones entered but never returned. Children were taught to never go near it. Elders spoke of strange echoes, of shadows that moved without light, of silence so deep it bent the mind. In that village lived a boy named Anu. From the time he could walk, Anu felt things more deeply than others. While his friends laughed at thunderstorms, Anu shivered. When others chased adventure, Anu clung to routine. He learned to mask his trembling with silence, his fear with stillness, and his uncertainty with obedience. But fear never slept. It wrapped itself around his daily life, in how he avoided new faces, in the way he paced at night, in how he needed to control every little thing just to feel safe. One night, a stranger arrived. She wore no armor, carried no weapons, just a walking stick and a calm presence that made even the wild dogs lie down. Her name was not known, but people whispered she had come from beyond the mountains. Some said she was a nun, others a healer. But what unsettled the villagers most was that she had walked past the cave and returned, unchanged. Anu, drawn by quiet desperation, sought her out. She listened as he spoke, haltingly, of his dreams, his panic, and the way fear had become a second skin. She didn't interrupt. That night, Anu didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, heart racing, the cave pulsing in his mind like a drumbeat. And then, for the first time, he decided not to avoid the question. He would go. At dawn, the sky bruised with purple and gold, Anu stepped into the forest. The path narrowed quickly. Vines reached like fingers. The forest was alive, not hostile, but alert. The deeper he went, the louder his thoughts became. His mind replayed every warning he'd ever heard, every tale, every imagined horror. And then, he saw it. The cave. A mouth of stillness in the side of the hill. Cold air poured out of it like breath from another world. He almost turned back, but something inside whispered, "Stay." With shaking hands, he lit a lantern and stepped inside. At first, all he could hear was his breath. Fast, ragged. Each footstep echoed too loudly. He sat near the wall and pulled his coat tight. Then, remembering the stranger's words, he began to breathe, slowly, deliberately. He didn't push away the fear. He named it. He greeted it. "I see you," he whispered. And the cave whispered back, "Nothing, just silence." But that silence, as minutes passed, softened. It stopped being empty and started to feel spacious. The cave, so feared for so long, was just a space. It had no malice, no mystery. It had only ever mirrored what people brought into it. In that moment, Anu understood. The cave never held monsters. It held mirrors. He wept, not from terror, but from release. The weight he had carried all his life, the fear he had named, obeyed, avoided, began to dissolve in the warmth of his own presence. He stayed for hours, or maybe days. When he returned, the villagers stared. He was the same boy, and yet, not. Someone asked. From then on, children played near the cave. Travelers passed without trembling, and the village learned something profound. Fear does not live in caves. It lives in silence, in avoidance, in the refusal to turn and face what hurts. Anu never claimed to be fearless. He still flinched at storms, still paused before dark paths. But now he walked them anyway, because he had learned that fear, when seen clearly, loses its power, and that seeing, that moment of stillness, of mindfulness, is where courage is born. Fear is not a malfunction. In the Buddhist path, it is neither a flaw nor an obstacle to be erased. It is a gate, and like any gate, it invites us to pass through with awareness. The Buddha did not teach us to chase after courage or suppress fear. He taught us to observe, to rest in the clarity of our own knowing. In the Pali Canon, fear is understood as one of the many mental formations, sankharas, transient, conditioned, not self. It arises due to causes and ceases when those causes are removed. Like a wave forming on the ocean surface, fear does not define the water. It simply passes. But for most of us, fear feels far from passing. It clings to our bodies, tightens our minds, reshapes our choices. It shows up in the way we avoid conversations, hesitate before change, or stay small in a life that asks for spaciousness. We are rarely taught how to relate to fear, only how to distract ourselves from it or mask it with false control. This is where the Dharma offers a different path. Mindfulness, or sati, is the first step on the noble eightfold path. It is not a technique to fix the mind, but a practice of intimate presence. It teaches us to turn toward our experience, whatever it is, with gentle observation. When fear arises, we do not run. We stay, we name, we breathe. This is especially true with fear. If we keep running from it, it grows larger, becomes abstract, vague, unmanageable. But when we stop, breathe, and observe it directly, in the body, in the mind, in the heart, something begins to soften. What once felt overwhelming becomes knowable. This moment of recognition is already a kind of liberation. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha instructs us to observe feelings as feelings, thoughts as thoughts, mind as mind. This is profound. It means we do not become the fear. We do not drown in it. We watch it gently. And with that recognition, we create space. And in that space, freedom is born. This simple verse points directly to the root. We fear because we cling to identity, to security, to permanence. We fear loss. We fear uncertainty. But when we see through the illusion of permanence, fear begins to lose its fuel. This is not about becoming emotionally cold. On the contrary, it is about becoming so intimate with reality that we are no longer pushed and pulled by illusions. Impermanence, anicca, non-self, anatta, and the unsatisfactory nature of all conditioned things, dukkha. These are not bleak truths. They are liberating, because once we see that all things arise and pass, we understand that fear, too, is not forever. The practice, then, is not to escape fear, but to rest with it, to walk into the cave, as Anu did, and sit down. This is the middle way, not indulgence, not repression, but presence. Practically, how do we do this? We begin by noticing the body. Fear lives in the chest, the stomach, the throat. We stay with them without judgment. We do not debate them. We observe them. Over time, we begin to distinguish between actual danger and imagined fear. Most of our fear, we come to see, is anticipatory. It is about something that has not happened. Mindfulness brings us back to what is happening. Here and now, what is true. Usually, we are breathing, we are sitting, we are safe. And if we are not safe, if real danger is present, then mindfulness sharpens our clarity, helping us respond wisely rather than react blindly. This is what the Buddha called virya, wise effort. Not struggle, not repression, but the steady commitment to stay present with what arises. In advanced practice, fear can even become a support for insight, because fear exposes the grasping of the self. It reveals our attachment to control. When we observe fear deeply, we glimpse the clinging that gives rise to it, and that insight weakens both. It is in this way that fear becomes a teacher. A shocking phrase, but one with meaning. Even the image of awakening, when clung to, becomes a barrier. The same is true with fear. When we hold tightly to the idea of being fearless or strong or in control, we suffer. But when we let go, when we simply stay present, we are free, even if fear remains. That's the paradox. Freedom is not found in the absence of fear, but in our new relationship to it. The transformation comes not from defeating fear, but from bowing to it, from understanding that even fear, in its trembling, is part of this moment, and that nothing in this moment needs to be pushed away. When fear arises, we do not shame ourselves, and we breathe again and again, until fear becomes not an enemy, but a companion, a doorway to wisdom, a reminder that what we are running from is rarely as powerful as our own capacity to see clearly. And that is the path. Fear shows up quietly in modern life, not only in emergencies or extreme situations, but in the subtle ways we hesitate, avoid, or shrink. We feel fear before speaking our truth, when making decisions that involve risk, or even in the silence of a free weekend, unsure of who we are, without something to control. In our work life, fear often wears the mask of productivity. We overwork, afraid of being seen as weak or dispensable. We stay in jobs that no longer nourish us because security, even when stale, feels safer than the unknown. We silence our creativity, waiting for perfect conditions that never come. Mindfulness invites us to pause in those moments and ask, what part of me is afraid right now? Is it fear of failure, of judgment, of not being enough? When we name the fear, it begins to soften, and when it softens, we regain choice. In relationships, fear is a frequent but unspoken visitor. Fear of rejection keeps us guarded. Fear of abandonment makes us cling. Fear of conflict makes us quiet when we should speak. These fears create distance even where there is love. But when we bring awareness to them, we can begin to relate differently. That shift in language, from blame to vulnerability, changes everything. Mindfulness teaches us to communicate from presence, not protection. And what about parenting? Parents often fear for their children's future, safety, and choices. This fear can become control, overprotectiveness, pressure, criticism. But what if, instead of acting from fear, we met our own anxiety with mindfulness? We might then guide from wisdom, not worry. We might trust more. And in doing so, model to our children how to meet life with presence rather than panic. Even our relationship with health is shaped by fear. We worry about aging, illness, death. We avoid thinking about it until we can't. But Buddhist practice reminds us, death is not the enemy, denial is. The contemplation of mortality is not morbid, it is liberating. It awakens us to live more fully, more presently. When fear of death is met with mindfulness, it turns into reverence for life. On a collective level, fear shapes society in profound ways. It fuels prejudice, fear of the other, of what is different. It drives consumerism, fear of not having enough. It shapes politics, fear of losing control. These collective fears, when unchecked, become systems of harm. But the Dharma teaches that collective healing begins with individual awareness. A person who learns to meet fear with clarity becomes a source of peace in their family, workplace, and community. Like a candle lighting others, their presence can help calm the storm. In times of global uncertainty, Pandemics, wars, climate crises, fear is everywhere. But we have a choice. Do we let fear harden us, isolate us, pit us against each other? Or do we use fear as a reminder to return to presence, compassion, and wise action? Mindfulness does not make fear disappear, but it helps us carry it differently, with balance, with breath. And that changes everything. You don't have to sit in a cave to practice this. You can begin now, in traffic, in a tense meeting, in a moment of sadness. Pause. Feel your body. Notice the fear. Name it gently. And breathe. This is the practice. And over time, this practice becomes a way of being, steady, kind, and grounded in the truth that even fear, when embraced with wisdom, can become part of the path. There is a quiet truth that unfolds only when we stop running, a truth that does not shout or demand, but simply waits. In the stillness of honest attention, we begin to see that fear is not the obstacle we imagined. It is not a barrier in the way of our path. It is the path, when seen clearly. Fear shows us where our edges are. It reveals the places inside us that have not yet been met with kindness. It holds up a mirror to the mind's habits, the need to control, to avoid, to predict. And when we finally turn toward it with presence, we do not find a monster. We find a younger part of ourselves, waiting to be heard. This is not sentimental. It is the work of deep courage. Because staying with fear, without reacting, without fleeing, without numbing, is perhaps one of the most radical things we can do. The teachings of the Buddha are often called a path of liberation. But liberation is not the dramatic moment when all fear vanishes. It is the subtle shift that happens when we stop believing that fear has to go away in order for us to be free. With the trembling, with the doubt, with the sensations in the belly, the thoughts racing through the mind, the aching need for certainty. We hold all of it in awareness, not to fix it, but to welcome it into the light. And this welcoming is revolutionary, because in a world that teaches us to push discomfort away, to buy something, to scroll past it, to suppress it with distractions, choosing to stay is a sacred act. Each time we do this, something shifts. We begin to realize that we are not the fear. We are the space in which it arises. This insight is at the heart of Buddhist wisdom, that we are not our thoughts, not our emotions, not even our reactions. We are the awareness that sees, the awareness that stays, the awareness that breathes, no matter what is happening inside or outside. This is what transforms fear, not force, not denial, but clarity and compassion. When we cultivate this kind of presence, on the cushion, in the middle of a tense conversation, in the moment before we speak our truth, we water the seeds of awakening. We train the heart to remain open. We teach the nervous system that it is safe to feel. And in this safety, the heart softens, the mind grows quiet, the breath returns. Sometimes the fear dissolves completely. Other times, it lingers, like a fog that takes time to lift. But even when it stays, it no longer owns us. We are no longer its prisoner. We become its witness, its student, and eventually, its guide. This is the turning of the path. And this turning begins wherever you are right now, with whatever fear lives in your body, with whatever story you've been carrying. You do not need to be fearless to begin. You only need to begin with gentleness. So take a breath. Feel the ground under you. Let the fear be here, if it is. Let it live. Let it speak. And meet it with the dignity of your full presence. You may find that the fear itself is not asking to be solved, but simply to be known. And in that knowing, it becomes less sharp, less solid, less threatening. It becomes what it always was, a part of life's unfolding, not its enemy. You are not broken because you feel fear. You are alive, awake, open. The invitation is not to destroy fear, but to include it in your practice, to make room for it at the table, to learn from it, walk with it, and keep choosing presence even when it trembles inside you. That choice, made again and again, is what changes everything. So let us not chase fearlessness as a goal. Let us instead cultivate the kind of love and wisdom that can sit calmly in the presence of fear and say, I see you. You are welcome here. This is the path of the awakened heart. Not one that has no fear, but one that has made peace with its presence. And in that peace, a new kind of freedom emerges. A freedom that is steady, grounded, and unshakable, because it does not depend on circumstances. It rests in knowing, whatever comes, I can stay, I can breathe, I can begin again. So now we return to the question we began with. How do you face the monster you can't see? The answer is simple, though never easy, with presence, with breath. Fear does not need to be defeated. It needs to be understood. When we stop pushing it away, it begins to shift. When we sit with it, breathe with it, and name it with care, it starts to loosen its grip. And in that space, we rediscover a power that was never lost, only hidden. You don't have to go into a forest. You don't need a cave. Your practice begins where you are, in the middle of a conversation, while waiting in line, during a restless night. Each moment is a gate, and mindfulness is the key that turns not by force, but by soft attention. This is your invitation, not to pretend you are fearless, but to walk with fear more wisely, to meet your trembling not with shame, but with a steady breath, to begin again, gently, whenever the heart tightens, because each time you choose awareness over avoidance, something sacred awakens. And with that awakening, you help create a world where fear no longer needs to dominate our lives or shape our society. A world where presence, compassion, and clarity guide our actions, even in uncertainty. So I invite you now, take one breath, just for yourself. Feel it fully, let it anchor you. And if this message touched something in you, leave a word in the comments, a reflection, a fear you're learning to hold, or simply a gesture of your presence here. Whatever it is, let it be a marker on this shared path, a quiet reminder that you are not alone. We walk this together, breath by breath, step by step. And in this walking, we remember, the way through fear is not to run, but to return, again and again, to the stillness within.